The emergency alarms screamed through the massive silver halls of the Galactic Council station. Red lights flashed on every wall as officials rushed between rooms, their faces filled with worry. In the main communication center, Ambassador Hejin sat at her desk, staring at the large screen in front of her. Her hands shook slightly as she watched. The message that had just arrived from deep space. The screen showed a creature unlike anything most humans had ever seen. It looked almost like a person, but its skin was pale blue and seemed to glow softly. Its large eyes were filled with tears, and burn marks covered its face and arms. Behind the creature, Hejin could see buildings on fire and smoke filling. This is colony leader Veltar of the Zephyrian people on planet Kepler 442, the creature said, its voice breaking with emotion. Our world is under attack. The Vorthan Empire has broken all peace treaties. They want our healing technology, the medicines that can cure any disease. We told them we only use our knowledge to help others, never for war. But they do not care. Image shook as explosions happened nearby. Veltar looked directly into the camera. They have given us 3 days to surrender our secrets, or they will kill every man, woman, and child on our planet. We are a peaceful people. We have no weapons, no armies. We only know how to heal and help others. Please, if anyone in the galaxy has a heart, help us. We do not want to die. The message ended and the room fell silent. Ambassador Hejin felt sick to her stomach. She had met Zephyrians before at peace meetings. They were gentle creatures who spent their entire lives learning how to cure diseases and heal wounds. They had saved millions of lives across the galaxy by sharing their medical knowledge freely with any species that needed help. Counselor Minho from the Andromedan Alliance walked into the room, his tall frame casting shadows. On the walls, his people looked like humans but were much taller and had silver hair. He shook his head sadly as he read the report on his tablet. This is terrible news, Minho said. I do not see what we can do. Our closest military fleet is 3 weeks. Away from Kepler 442, the Zephyrians will be dead long before we can reach them. Representative Soyoung from the trade union rushed in, her breathing heavy from running. Her species had green skin and large ears that could hear sounds from very far away. What about the Centauri defense fleet? She asked hopefully. A day. Have fast ships. Minho looked at his calculations again. Even they would need 18 days to travel that far. The mathematics are clear. No one can reach the Zephyrians in time to save them. Hejin stood up slowly, her mind racing. She had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 2 years now. In that time, she had watched as other species looked down on humanity. They called humans primitive because their technology was not as advanced. They said humans were too emotional and too quick to fight. Many council members thought Earth should not even be allowed in the Galactic Council. There is one possibility, Hejin said quietly. The human defense fleet has ships near the Outer Rim territories. They could reach Kepler 442 in less than 2 days. The room erupted in laughter. Minho wiped tears from his eyes. The humans? You cannot be serious, Hejin. Your people have only been in space for a few hundred years. Your ships are powered by simple fusion engines. What could they possibly do against Vorthon battlecruisers that have been conquering worlds for thousands of years? Soyoung nodded in agreement. The Vorthons are one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy. Their ships are 3 times larger than human vessels. Their weapons can destroy entire cities with a single shot. Sending humans against them would be like sending children to fight dragons. But Hejin was already typing on her communication console. She remembered stories from Earth's history, tales of humans doing impossible things when innocent people were in danger. She thought about how humans had always been willing to fight against odds that seemed hopeless if it meant protecting those who could not protect themselves. Maybe you were right, she said as she finished typing the message. Maybe human ships are smaller and their weapons are weaker. But there is something you do not understand about my species. What is that? Minho asked, still chuckling. Hejin pressed the send button. Transmitting the Zephyrian distress call directly to Earth's military command. Humans do not calculate odds when innocent people are dying. We do not debate politics when children are about to be murdered. We just act. The message raced through space toward Earth at the speed of light. Then hours it would reach Terra Command, where Fleet Admiral Dongwu would read about the gentle Zephyrians facing extinction. And then the galaxy would discover what humans were truly capable of when pushed to protect the innocent. Minho stopped laughing as he watched Hyjin's determined face. For the first time, he wondered if perhaps the other species had been wrong about humanity. The communication room at Terra Command was buzzing with activity when the emergency message arrived from the Galactic Council. Fleet Admiral Dongwu stood in the center, his gray hair perfectly combed despite being woken up at 3 in the morning. Around him, dozens of officers worked at glowing computer screens, their faces lit by the blue light of star maps and ship status reports. "Sir, priority message from Ambassador Hyjin," called out Communications Officer Yun-Su from her station. She was young, maybe 25 years old, but her voice was steady and professional. "It's marked as urgent." Dongwu walked over to the main display screen. "Put it through, Yun-Su." The screen filled with the desperate face of the Zephyrian colony leader. Dongwu watched in silence as Veltar pleaded for help, showing the burning cities and terrified families hiding in underground shelters. When the message ended, the entire command center had gone quiet. Every person in the room had stopped their work to listen. Captain Suben stepped forward from where she had been studying fleet positions. She was shorter than most of the other officers, but everyone respected her quick thinking and brave leadership. "Admiral, I've run the numbers. The Vorthan fleet has 3 heavy battle cruisers and at least 12 smaller ships. Our closest battle group has only 8 vessels." Commander Jae-sung, the leader of the Marine Forces, crossed his arms over his broad chest. His uniform was covered with medals from previous battles, and a long scar ran down his left cheek. "Vorthons are known for their brutal tactics, sir. They don't just defeat their enemies, they make examples of them." Admiral the Jin, who commanded the medical ships, looked up from her tablet. She was the oldest person in the room, with kind eyes that had seen too much suffering over the years. "Sir, our hospital ships Seoul and Busan are fully equipped. Could save thousands of refugees if we can get there in time." Dongwu stood quietly for a long moment, staring at the star map that showed the location of Kepler 442. It was far away, at the edge of known space. The journey would be dangerous, and they would be heavily outnumbered when they arrived. Any other military commander might have calculated the risks and decided it was impossible. But Dongwu was not like other commanders. He had grown up hearing stories about his grandfather, who had fought in the old wars on Earth. His grandfather had always said that the measure of a person was not how they acted when things were easy, but what they did when innocent people needed help and no one else could provide it. "How long to mobilize the fleet?" Dongwu asked. Subin checked her computer. "The destroyers in Chen, Gwangju, and Dagu are ready now. The battleship Sejong needs 4 hours for final preparations. The Seoul and Busan can be ready in 6 hours." "About marine deployment?" Dongwu asked Jae-sung. "First and third marine companies are already aboard their transport ships. We can have 2,000 marines ready for combat in less than 5 hours, sir." Dongwu nodded slowly. Around the galaxy, other species would spend days or weeks debating whether to respond to the distress call. They would form committees and hold meetings. They would calculate costs and political advantages. They would worry about what might happen to their own people. Humans were different. When they heard that innocent people were about to die, they acted first and worried about the details later. "Signal all ships in the Outer Rim sector," Dongwu commanded. "Emergency mobilization. We jump to hyperspace in 8 hours." The command center erupted into controlled chaos as officers began carrying out orders. Communication officers sent messages to ship captains. Supply officers checked weapon and food stores. Medical staff prepared emergency equipment. Yun-Su looked up from her communication panel. "Sir, should I send a reply to the Galactic Council? They're probably expecting us to tell them we cannot help." Dongwu thought about this for a moment. He imagined the faces of Counselor Min-ho and Representative Sa-young when they received his message. They had laughed at the idea of humans fighting the mighty Vorthan Empire. They saw humanity as weak newcomers who did not understand how the galaxy really worked. "Send them this message," Dongwu said. "Tell them that the human defense fleet is responding to the Zephyrian distress." Call. Tell them that we will arrive at Kepler 442 in 36 hours. And tell them that if they want to understand what humans are truly capable of, they should watch carefully. Captain Subin stepped closer to the Admiral. Sir, the crew knows this. Is dangerous? The Vorthans have never lost a major battle. But every single person on every ship has volunteered to go. They all want to help save the Zephyrians. Dongwu smiled for the first time since receiving the distress call. This was why he was proud to be human. Other species might be stronger or smarter or more advanced. But when innocent people were in danger, humans would travel across the galaxy to help them, no matter what the cost. Then let's show the galaxy what happens when you threaten people under human protection, he said. The stars around the human defense fleet suddenly changed from long streaks of light back into tiny points as the ships dropped out of hyperspace. Admiral Dongwu stood on the bridge of the battleship Sajong, his hands gripped tightly behind his back as he stared at the main viewing screen. What he saw made his stomach turn with anger. The planet Kepler 442 hung in space like a beautiful blue and green jewel, but it was surrounded by the dark shapes of Vorathon warships. Even from this distance, Dongwu could see explosions lighting. Up the planet's surface like deadly fireworks, thick black smoke covered entire continents where once peaceful cities had been turned into burning ruins. Report, Dongwu said quietly, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. Navigation Officer Ji-hoon looked up from his computer screen, his young face pale with shock. Sir, we count 15 Vorthon vessels, 3 heavy battlecruisers, 8 destroyers, and 4 support ships. They're positioned in orbit around the planet, taking turns bombing different cities. Communications specialist Yun Su adjusted her headset, listening to the radio signals coming from the planet below. Admiral, I'm picking up Zephyrian emergency broadcasts. Their shield generators are almost completely destroyed. They are estimating maybe 12 hours before their last defenses fail completely.
Ow.
Dongwu watched as another explosion bloomed on the planet's surface. Somewhere down there, innocent families were hiding in basements and underground shelters, praying that someone would come to save them. Children were crying for their parents. Doctors and nurses were working frantically to save the wounded. Even as bombs fell around their hospitals, Sir called out Weapons Officer Teho from his station. The Vorthon flagship is sending us a transmission. Put it on screen, Dongwu ordered. The main display changed to show the interior of a Vorthon. Command bridge. The creature sitting in the captain's chair was massive. Easily 8 feet tall, with thick gray skin covered in battle scars. His eyes were yellow and cruel, and when he smiled, rows of sharp teeth became visible. This was Commander Thackerone, one of the most feared military leaders in the Vorthan Empire. Well, Thackerone said, his voice deep and mocking. The Galactic Council sends babies to interfere with Imperial business. Look at your tiny ships, little humans. My flagship alone has more firepower than your entire fleet. Behind Thackerone, other Vorthan officers laughed and pointed at the human ships on their screens. To them, the human vessels looked like toys compared to their massive war machines. Dongwu stepped forward, his face calm and controlled. This is Admiral Dongwu of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are in violation of the Neutral Zone Accords. We're committing genocide against a protected species. I am ordering you to withdraw from this system immediately. Sakharone's laughter boomed through the speakers. Or what, little human? You will file a complaint with the Council? Your 8 ships against my 15. Your primitive weapons against Vorthan battle steel? He leaned forward in his chair. I have conquered 47 worlds and destroyed the fleets of 12 different species. What makes you think you can succeed where they failed? Because Dongwu replied quietly, they were not human. Thackerone's expression changed slightly. Something in the human admiral's voice made him pause. But then he shook his head and laughed. Again, you want to see what happens to species that interfere with the Vorthane Empire? Watch this. Transmission ended, and on the main screen, the humans watched in horror as one of the Vorthan destroyers turned its massive guns toward cluster of buildings on the planet's surface. Even from space, they could see that it was a hospital complex, marked with the universal medical symbol. Thousands of wounded Zephyrians and their doctors were inside. "Sir, that's a medical facility," Yunsu said, her voice shaking with emotion. "They're going to destroy a hospital full of injured people." The Vorthon ship fired. A beam of pure energy struck the hospital complex, and the entire building disappeared in a ball of fire. Where moments before there had been doctors trying to save lives, now there was only smoking rubble. The bridge of the Sejong fell completely silent. Every human officer stared at the screen, watching the smoke rise from what had been a place of healing. In that moment, something changed in the eyes of every person present. They had just witnessed the cold-blooded murder of doctors, nurses, and patients whose only crime was trying to help others. Admiral Dongwu turned away from the screen. When he faced his crew again, they saw something that would become legend. Throughout the galaxy, they saw a human who had just watched innocent people die, and who now had the power to do something about it. "Signal all ships," Dongwu said, his voice quiet but filled with deadly purpose. "Battle stations. Combat alert. Prepare for immediate engagement." Captain Subin stepped forward from her position at the tactical station. "Sir, what are our orders?" Dongwu looked at each of his officers in turn. These were good people who had traveled across the galaxy to save strangers they had never met. They had volunteered for a mission that everyone said was impossible, and now they had seen evil with their own eyes. "Our orders are simple," he said. "Show the Vorthons why Earth is called a death world. Show them what happens when you murder innocents in front of humans. Make sure that not a single Vorthon ship leaves this system until every last Zephyrian is safe." The moment Admiral Dongwu gave the attack order, the human defense fleet transformed from a collection of ships into something the galaxy had never seen before. They did not form neat battle lines like other species. They did not follow the standard military textbooks that every naval academy taught. Instead, they moved like a pack of wolves that had found their prey. Captain Subin's destroyer, Enchan, was the first to strike. Instead of engaging the Vorthon ships at long range like a normal captain would do, she ordered her ship to dive straight toward the enemy flagship at maximum speed. Her crew thought she had gone crazy. "Captain, we're heading directly into their main guns," called out her weapons officer, his voice filled with panic. "I know exactly what I'm doing," Subin replied calmly. "All power to forward shields. Prepare boarding pods for launch." The Vorthon gunners opened fire, sending massive energy beams toward the small human ship. But Subin had spent years studying how different species fought in space. She knew that the big Vorthon guns were powerful, but slow to turn. Her destroyer danced between the shots. Like a bird avoiding a giant's clumsy hands, the Inchins smashed through the Vorthon flagship's energy shields and came alongside the massive enemy ship. Immediately, dozens of small pods shot out from the destroyer's hull and attached themselves to the Vorthon vessel like metal parasites. Inside the flagship, Commander Thackeron felt his ship shake as the human boarding pods cut through his hull. "What are they doing?" he roared at his officers. "No species uses boarding attacks anymore. This is ancient primitive warfare." But Commander Jae-sung and his Marines knew something that Thackeron did not understand. Humans had been fighting hand-to-hand combat for thousands of years on their dangerous homeworld, while other species relied entirely on their ship's weapons. Humans were just as deadly when they got close enough to look their enemies in the eyes. The Marines burst through the holes they had cut in the Vorthon ship's walls. They moved through the corridors like shadows, using their smaller size and faster reflexes to avoid the clumsy Vorthon soldiers. Within minutes, Jae-sung's team had reached the ship's weapon control room. "Weapon systems are offline," Jae-sung reported over his radio as his Marines destroyed the enemy ship's gun controls, moving to disable their engines next. Meanwhile, the destroyer Gwangju was fighting 3 Vorthon ships at once. Her captain, Min Sik, had been wounded when an enemy shot damaged his bridge, but he refused to retreat to the medical bay. Blood ran down his face as he continued giving orders to his crew. "Sir, our main guns are destroyed, and we're losing hull pressure on decks 4 and 5, reported his first officer. "We should pull back and make repairs." Minseek looked at the tactical display, showing Vorthan ships still bombing the planet below. More Zephyrian cities were being destroyed every minute they delayed. Negative. A collision course for that. Battle cruiser. If we cannot shoot them, we will ram them. De Guanju turned toward the largest Vorthan ship, her engines pushing her faster and faster, despite the damage she had taken. The enemy captain realized what was happening and tried to turn away, but it was too late. The human destroyer smashed into the Vorthan cruiser's engine section. Both ships disappeared in a massive explosion. On the bridge of the Sejong, Admiral Dongwu watched his fleet fight with a mixture of pride and sadness. He was proud because his people were showing incredible courage. He was sad because brave humans were dying to save strangers they had never met. Admiral called Communications Officer Yuan Su. The hospital ship's Seoul is requesting permission to approach the damaged Vorthan vessels. Admiral De Jin says she's detecting life signs in their wreckage. Dongwu did not hesitate. Permission granted. We do not leave wounded to die, regardless of which side they fought on. This order confused the Vorthon survivors who were floating in space after their ships were destroyed. They had expected the humans to kill them or leave them to die slowly in the cold vacuum of space. Instead, human rescue ships were pulling them to safety and giving them medical treatment. Commander Thackerone, whose flagship was now powerless and drifting, spoke to one of the human marines who had captured him. I do not understand your species, he said. First, you fight like demons from the deepest hell. Then you risk your lives to save your enemies. Why? Jae Sung removed his helmet, showing his young face marked with sweat and determination. Because that is what makes us human. We fight to protect the innocent, and we show mercy to the defeated. After 4 hours of battle, the surviving Vorthan ships were fleeing the system as fast as their damaged engines could carry them. But the humans did not celebrate their victory. Instead, every available ship immediately began rescue operations. Searching for survivors, both on the planet below and among the wreckage, floating in space, the galaxy watched in amazement as the same humans, who had just destroyed a superior enemy force, now worked frantically to save every life they could find, including the lives of their former enemies. No species in galactic history had ever fought with such deadly efficiency and then shown such compassion to the defeated. The news of the Battle of Kepler 442 spread across the galaxy faster than anyone could have imagined. Within hours, every major species had received detailed reports of what the humans had accomplished. Video recordings of the battle played on news broadcasts from the core worlds to the outer rim territories. And everywhere they were shown, the same shocked silence followed. Ambassador Haijin stood in the main hall of the Galactic Council watching. As representatives from dozens of different species stared at the large screens displaying the battle footage, she could see the confusion and fear in their eyes as they watched human ships fighting in ways that defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. Counselor Minho sat in his chair with his mouth hanging open, his silver hair seeming to have turned even more gray in just a few hours. His hands shook slightly as he read the battle report for the 5th time. This is impossible, he whispered. The humans had only 8 ships. The Vorthans had 15, including 3 heavy battle cruisers. Representative Soyoung's large ears twitched nervously as she listened to the audio recordings of the human communications during the battle. Listen to this, she said, playing back Admiral Dongwu's voice. Ordered his medical ships to rescue wounded Vorthans, even while the battle was still happening. What kind of species saves their enemies while they are still fighting them? The room fell silent again as they watched footage of human marines boarding Vorthan ships. These were not the clumsy, primitive attacks that other species expected from the newcomers to the galaxy. Instead, they saw humans moving through enemy ships like ghosts, striking with deadly precision and then vanishing before the enemy could respond. Ambassador Hejin stepped forward to address the council. Honored representatives, I present the final casualty report from Kepler 442-47. Thousands Zephyrian civilians have been rescued and are currently aboard our hospital ships receiving medical care. This includes every surviving member of their species. What about human casualties? Asked Counselor Minho quietly. We lost the destroyer Guanju and her entire crew of 230 people. Another 400 humans were wounded. In the fighting, they accomplished something that everyone in this room said was impossible. The footage changed to show the aftermath of the battle. Human medical teams were working frantically on the surface of Kepler 442 pulling Zephyrian. Survivors from the rubble of destroyed cities, human engineers were setting up temporary shelters and power generators. Human doctors were treating wounded Vorthans alongside injured Zephyrians, making no distinction between former enemies and the people they had come to save. I have been in contact with military commanders from 12 different species, announced General Kavtok of the Regaline Defense Force. His people were known as some of the finest warriors in the galaxy. His voice carried the respect of someone who understood warfare. Every single one of them has reached the same conclusion. The human battle tactics we witnessed should not have worked. By every rule of military science, the Vorthans should have won easily. Then how do you explain what happened? Asked So Young. General Kavtok stood up, his massive frame casting shadows across the room. The humans did not fight like civilized species fight. They fought like the predators they evolved from on their death world, used tactics that no sane military commander would ever attempt because they require a willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. The screen now showed Admiral Dong Wu standing on the bridge of his ship as it approached Earth, surrounded by the convoy of refugee ships carrying the rescued Zephyrians. His face looked tired but determined, and when he spoke to the camera, his words were simple and direct. The Galactic Council asked what humans are capable of. Dongwu said, "Now you know. We are capable of crossing the galaxy to save strangers. We are capable of fighting impossible odds when innocent people are in danger. And we are capable of showing mercy to our enemies even after they have committed terrible crimes." Ambassador Haijin watched as the other council members absorbed this message. She could see the change happening in their eyes. For years, they had looked at humanity as primitive newcomers who did not understand how the galaxy really worked. Now they were beginning to realize that maybe it was they who did not understand. "What do the humans want in return for this rescue?" asked Counselor Minho suspiciously. "What territory do they claim? What resources do they demand?" Haijin smiled. "Admiral Dongwu has requested permission to settle the Zephyrian refugees on 3 uninhabited worlds in human space. He wants to give them new homes where they can rebuild their civilization in safety. As for payment or rewards, he has refused all offers." The room erupted in shocked conversations. Every species in the galaxy understood warfare as a means to gain power, territory, or resources. But the humans had risked everything and asked for nothing in return, except the right to help their former enemies start new lives. "Motion to formally recognize Earth as a major power within the Galactic Council," announced General Kavtok. "All in favor?" Every hand in the room went up. As the vote was recorded, Haijin realized that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer seen as primitive or naive. They were now recognized as the galaxy's most dangerous protectors. Species who would travel across space to defend the innocent and powerful enough to succeed against impossible odds.